Well, I mostly work on the history and contemporary aspects of Indian foreign policy, and I'm interested in looking at India's changing role in the world over a long period of time. And I would say that my work falls broadly into three strands. In the first strand, I do primarily historical work, which is more diplomatic, international history, trying to understand how India's position in the world has evolved over a period of time. The second is what you might call a strategic studies, which is primarily dealing with questions of how states use the various kinds of resources that they have, military, economic, political, in order to improve their relative position in the world. And the third is more contemporary issues of foreign and security policy. So my work tries to bring all of these three strands together. And the way I see it is that history is the study of the past with an eye to the present, and strategy is an examination of the present with an eye to the future. And policy needs both of these. Well, contemporary history has several sets of challenges. The first of these, of course, is that you do not have enough of what other historians would consider as proper historical sources in order to be able to study a period. And in the Indian case, that is particularly problematic because the government of India and various agencies in public life do not really follow declassification procedures in quite the way that it is done elsewhere. And that, I think, definitely makes it one important challenge, which is that how do you get the primary source materials, which are the building blocks of any history. The second challenge is about how do you, overcome the sort of biases and feelings, prejudices, strong views that people have about recent historical events, because these are part of public memory. They shape contemporary sort of social and political life in very strong ways. So overcoming those kinds of approaches and biases is the challenge. As I see it, the greatest challenge for a contemporary historian is that he or she has to be able to anticipate the verdict of posterity and not simply either confirm or disprove the sort of judgments of the contemporaries or the generations that are around. And that really is a very tricky thing to do. Well, I mean, there are two kinds of things that draw me to a subject. In the first instance, I either get drawn to questions where the conventional wisdom is very strong. For instance, I've done a book on the Nehru years. I've done another book on the creation of Bangladesh in 1971. And in both of these subjects, the received wisdom of common understanding is very, very strong in one direction. And I'm always drawn to subjects where I'm able to challenge some of that and provide new perspectives. The second, of course, I'm drawn to subjects which I feel are very large questions which are completely neglected. And here, my forthcoming book on India in the Second World War is a good example. Because here you have an event which was of momentous significance for India, but is more or less sort of given only a walk-on part in most of our histories of the 1940s. So for me, bringing to light a subject which has been neglected is another major motivation to be able to take on any particular topic. When you think about, say, two contrasting figures in our contemporary history, like Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi, and when you're looking at their handling of India's relations with the wider world, Jawaharlal Nehru is broadly seen as someone who sort of failed on a number of fronts, especially China. And Indira Gandhi, on the other hand, had this great moment of success in 1971. But delving deep into the subject, what I realized over the course of my researches is that the picture actually turns out to be, in some ways, quite the contrary, which is that Jawaharlal Nehru actually comes out of my book as someone who has a much surer understanding of the world in which he was operating. Of course, he made mistakes. And Indira Gandhi, on the other hand, does not seem to be quite the decisive person that she is. So, in a sense, what we think about these figures from this distance of time, I think in that sense turns out to be quite different from the way contemporaries thought about them. Well, statecraft is an amalgam of multiple things. First of all, there are structural pressures, right? Every state operates in an international system where there are differential levels of power, economic, military, political, soft power, call it what you will. Then there are individual states with their structures of decision making. Democratic systems are very different from autocratic systems and so on. And then there are individuals who at decisive moments can make all the difference. So if you're thinking about statecraft, you have to at least think about it in these multiple levels of how decision making happens. Well, I think it will make a difference not just to my work, but to these disciplines as well, because this is the first time that the Infosys Prize has been given to international relations and strategic studies particularly. And as I said, these disciplines are kind of marginal to the social sciences and the study of history in India. And to the extent that it will help give wider sort of generate interest, give a fillip to the study of these areas, I think the Infosys Prize will count for a lot.